All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the Dunn County Executive Committee for Wednesday, June 11, 2025 at 3:30 in room 60 of the Dunn County Government Center to order. The first order of business is the call of the roll. Ms. Corpola?
Supervisor Bauer.
Here.
Supervisor Prochnow.
Here.
Supervisor Headland.
Here.
Supervisor Vogel. Supervisor Morehouse.
Here.
Supervisor Quinn.
Here.
Supervisor Steen.
Here.
Supervisor McCullough or Chair McCullough.
Here.
And Supervisor Wilsey.
Here.
And Supervisor Kinnear is excused. He may eventually be able to show up, but he was not certain of that.
Thank you very much. The next order of business would be the approval of the minutes for May 14th, 2025. You all had a copy, had a chance to peruse it, I hope. I would entertain a motion to approve. Is there a second? Supervisor Morehouse and Supervisor Headland move and second. Are there any corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Public comments. I am not aware of any. Are you? And we have nobody here, so there are no public comments. The Committee on Administration may convene in closed session pursuant to section 19.85, parent 1, parent C of the Wisconsin statute to consider employment of the county manager. I would, should be, Committee on, the Executive Committee. There, let's crack that right away. I would entertain a motion to that effect that we go into closed session. Okay. Supervisor Quinn, Supervisor Morehouse, first and seconds. We're going to go into closed session pursuant to section 19.85, parent 1, parent C of the Wisconsin statutes to consider employment of the county manager. We are now out of executive session.
Jenna, do you want to go let the masses in?
Yeah.
Jim.
Now,
What? I will edit it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, it doesn't.
Chris,
We'll take it out.
should I be stating what action was taken then?
You certainly can.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's the technically correct way to do it is to.
that's what I thought, but I want to make sure. Would the money figure be in there too or not?
It is public record, but you certainly could say that the committee agreed on or approved a salary.
Okay. Are we back in business now?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
I never stopped us. I have to fix it later.
Oh, okay. Oh, holy moly. Well, just to summarize what happened in the executive session, the executive committee took action to approve a salary range to be negotiated with Mr. Dan Dunbar. And later in the meeting, we'll be having a resolution to allow our county chairman to negotiate the salary with him. Moving on. County manager's report.
All right, you have a copy of the agenda for the county board, which again, often just mirrors this one. So I don't know that there's anything, I don't believe there are also any ordinances or resolutions coming from any of the standing committees this month. It was a quiet month as a general rule from that side of things. So that'll be pretty straightforward. I will be gone as of Monday. Hope to make it the 2 weeks-ish mark, maybe less if I can how that all goes, but we'll be having surgery on Monday morning. And then you had a memo, and I'm not looking for an action. I'm looking more for almost an endorsement. Like if you think that is not a good idea, I will, like, I'm not looking for a vote. I'm just saying if anyone objects to the use of outreach funds for the purposes of some of those community related relationship building events, now is your time to speak. Otherwise, that's how we would choose to utilize that money.
Even though I'm chairing the meeting, is it all right if I speak to it?
It's your meeting.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. It's my meeting. Now we'll get down to business here. No, I feel that this is an excellent use of our money, and also one of the reasons that we hired the person that is leaving us was to become more of the face of the county and the public. I think it's a very good use of the money and a good use of raising the awareness of who works for the county, who represents the county, and also fostering good relations with all other levels of government and the public. So I'm very much in favor of it. So, having said that, I guess that's enough then, huh?
Yep, that's all that I have.
All right.
Can
Next
you hear me now?
order of business is number 8, report resolutions and ordinance to the county boards from the executive committee. 8A, resolution adopting 2026-2030 capital improvement plan. I would, is there any information, questions that you need to move forward on that?
So Beata has a presentation prepared if you want to
I didn't mean to overlook her.
take a motion, and then she can do her presentation.
I would entertain a motion to adopt the 2026-2030 capital improvement plan. Supervisor Morehouse moves, Supervisor Quinn seconds. Do we have the explanation before the vote?
Yep,
Okay,
you do.
thank you, Beata. I did not mean to overlook you.
All right, I'm out of breath, but I have some saved for this one. Oh. Okay, so what I presenting you with is the proposed 2026 CIP, which is the first page. The page behind it is the 5-year plan, as our practice has been that we reach out to all the departments heads, asking them to provide us a list of all the purchases, capital project items they might need in the next 5 years. Also, as you recall, we recently, beginning, I believe it was in April, there was an adoption of a CIP policy that help us define what item are we going to call CIP. So in that presentation, which is this PowerPoint, so I'm going to use that to kind of give you some highlights as to what has transpired. So as I mentioned that, each year the county board adapts that 5-year plan. But I know this also has came up year and years, like what are we looking or adapting? It's the 5 years, but specifically 2026. So a lot of my presentation here is going to pertain to some of those high ticket items that are in that plan for that 5-year plan. But also keep in mind that what you have here does not include highway road projects. Those are included in the annual budget cycle. So the policy was actually adopted in March, not April. So in that policy, we set perimeters around what is a capital improvement plan. So capital improvement, we define this, it's a long-term, high-cost type of a project. So that would be building, building a building, or remodeling an existing, or making repairs, or replacing a physical assets, and that can be equipment. But there are other items that are typically submitted by the departments that are not necessarily high ticket items, if you're looking at the budget as a whole, but more of a around, let's say, 100,000. Like I think a very popular has been is squad cars. They purchase 4 squad cars, and it usually adds up for all 4 of them that 310 some dollars. And I'm not sure if it includes built or not, but regardless. So then the policy we defined is, if a department has those purchases that are greater than 100,000, like for example, the squad cars, we're going to look at them and says, that's a one-time purchase. I know that squad cars are reoccurring every year, they submit them, but looking through the lens of funding them, says how can we fund them on a one time without taking on long-term debt, that paying off the debt will by far exceed the life of the asset. And the other criteria we set around is that rules, because they're small departments. So if there's a small department that has a purchase, let's say $35,000, we're going to look at, is that within that 7%? And then other higher items that they really don't have any other funding sources for, that would require them to secure other funding, in some cases could be fund balance, but not necessarily borrow for it. So the next page is, I know this is, I probably sound like a broken record, but it's an item to brag about. So right now, how we stand with the debt, and this is unaudited as of end of 24, we have about $23.7 million of debt. And we still continue to be at a AA rating, which is great because that impacts the rates that we can secure future debt. The following slide, I wanted to bring forward the items that we currently have on the books as items that we took out debt for. And the very last column kind of tells you what's the remaining balance as of that year end of 2024. And the columns will tell you when we actually borrowed and what was the original debt issuance. So then the following slide is a graph. I wanted to give you a visual as to how our debt is being reduced by the debt payments or debt service that we make every year. So this does not include the debt that we're going to borrow yet this year. The reason I excluded, because we still have a lot of analysis to do, is to what might remain for the highway and what would that look like. So, but for this presentation, to be on a safe side, I just excluded that for now. So what you see is a debt as of today, and this would be our debt reduction if we never borrowed moving forward. So the next slide, next page 4 on the top, this is to some items to consider as you're thinking about the CIP. We have upcoming budget. So items that need to be considered is, of course, wages. Wages make a little over 51% of our budget, so that's a huge part. Also, there might be some changes to the benefits. There's areas of unknown, but something to consider as we get closer into that process. And also, this does not include highway construction project. And according to Dustin, it's about that $6.8 million. And that would be in his annual budget. And we also looking, there might be some slight increases in the operating budget. So that is like contractual services, pencils, printers, so on and so on. Okay. The next slide, I wanted to kind of, again, bring it to surface as to what does our general fund balance look like. So this is based on the year end of 2024. And this dollar amount already includes what's been moved to the highway because we've made some changes. Okay. So that leaves us at that 53%. But we also have an ordinance that, or fund balance, it says that it should not be less than 35 and no more than 50%. So we are still above that 50 as of that year in 2024. So the next one, I know it's a small slide, but I have the bigger printout. So I'm going to take you back to the summary sheet of all the projects for 26 that we kind of need to, you would consider to come up with the recommendation for funding. So we had a CIP workshop early in the year. And what was presented in that workshop was everything but the HVAC system. Because there was other plan with the HVAC system. Things have changed, which kind of had us redirect as far as what that CIP is going to look like. So I'm just, if you need more information about what had transpired to switch to what was originally planned to where it is today, I can have a discussion later, or Chris here's to answer any more on those in-depth questions about all the needed change that end up in here. But everything else really stayed the same. Well, I take it back, with the exception of the highway. In the workshop, we had a highway engineering cost here, right? So today, in the morning, I attended the meeting, the highway committee meeting, and they made our recommendations to proceed with the project, but they moved a different year. So then that engineering design cost fell off of 26, but you will see where it fits in the 5-year plan on the next page of the CIP printout, which is this second printout. So for 2026, the recommendation is that, of course, we would issue debt for the $9.5 million. That is to cover the geothermal, HVAC geothermal. And then there's the remaining of $785,000. And as you see, I've kind of labeled them, what qualifies CIP and one time based on the policy. If it's an item that's improving building, it's a long-term asset, then we say, okay, that doesn't really qualify as a one-time. So the one-time that's sitting there is $30,000. That's for the John Deere tractor. So for those, the recommendation is to use the fund balance of $785 and not issue debt. And then the debt would only be for the geothermal, and it can be up to 20 years. So it gives us some flexibility. So the following slides, I get a little bit into strategy, because now this is going to try to paint a picture. Yes, go ahead.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
It would be helpful to me if you could go, I just didn't catch it when you were explaining why the equipment replacement fund was going to be funded not out of debt, but out of other sources. Is that what I heard you say?
So in our policy, we defined, there's 3 criteria to define what will fall under the CIP. So if it does not have any funding behind it, then it would be on CIP. So like for IT has a replacement fund.
Right.
That is not on here. That's going to be in part of their annual budget because they have funding for that.
Okay.
Okay. So what you see here is something that the departments cannot absorb and don't have any funding set aside. So they're asking for other way or ask to fund it other means. So there's no grants that are available. So really leaves us with issue some sort of either a debt or use some of the fund balance. Now, the highway has its own fund, and highway is not on here. So the reason that it was and it was taken out, because it's still, even though it had a funding source, which, well, I shouldn't say it has, it was to a discussion and a decision if the direction was that they're going to use the highway fund. The option could have been that they're not going to use highway and use other sources. But because it got moved, it disappeared off of that. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, oh yes, my turn, right? Okay, so the next slides, I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a, paint a picture about long-term, right? So we have a couple projects on the horizon. So there is the recommendation for the geothermal projects. And then the highway committee also has a recommendation for the highway to build the highway facility and then do a renovations. So I reached out to PMA to help us structure our debt based on criteria or that we have that we want to have a ceiling with what we're going to levy for debt. So being at $5.3 million at any given time. So knowing that, I asked them to build in what would be the best opportunity. So they provided us a couple scenarios, but what I'm bringing to you is what has been recommended by the highway committee as to when that project at the highway facility and renovation would take place. So again, the idea here is our objective is to be at that capacity of that 5.3, give or take. And then is to fund the geothermal using debt of 9.5 million as it was estimated. But then also look to see how far on the horizon are the other projects. So the proposed geothermal, again, issue debt, but then our debt service payment, even though we're going to issue it in 2026, we're not going to have payments, won't be starting due until March 2027. So our consultants, they work with us and structure what would that interest and principal be and when to fit in those perimeters around 5.3 million. But then also they worked in our perpetual borrowing of $3 million every year for highway road projects. So with this geothermal happening in 2026, we will be at that 5.3, give or take, in 27 through 2031. Okay. Any questions on that slide?
Can I interrupt you for a second, Beata, and just give you a little bit, this is what I did at highway this morning, and just give you a little bit of a kind of the flow of how this has all happened, just as a reminder. So you saw a CIP proposal plan back a couple of months back. At that point in time, we still believed that we were going through with the geothermal solar project with Verigy. As it turns out, that wasn't viable. So last week, recently, the facilities committee came back, and 2 weeks ago, I guess, came back and debated the what to do next with regards to the HVAC needs in the judicial center. There essentially were two options. One would be to continue to slowly retrofit and fix the existing system. The other would be to move forward with the geothermal system. The reason why it's important to decide one or the other is because once you start down a path of fixing the oldest system, you're tied into that plan. So if you buy a $500,000 part to do something, a control or something else in the system to maintain the existing legacy system, then you have invested significantly in that, and you don't want to stray from that track. So the facilities committee, after discussion, decided to recommend moving forward with a geothermal system. which then ties us into borrowing it in one chunk instead of spreading it out over a number of years. So then that was because the original plan, the original CIP plan had the proposal for the design and engineering for a highway storage facility. Then the highway committee this morning needed to decide, did they want to stay the course with us, with that project as well, or come up with a different alternative? And they decided to move the decision at least a year down the road, maybe longer, but understanding that the HVAC was a priority need, and wanting to keep a cap, not raise our debt service above what it currently is, they decided to forego that project for the time being. So that's how you get to today, with regard to where we are at and what the needs are and what the borrowing would look like.
Thank you. So with the geothermal,
Question on
oh,
that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I don't know who I would direct this to, but how does the number of 9.5 million, who comes up with that number?
So we had the information from Verigy, and then we actually had, I'm trying to think of where we had the other option to have another look at that site, but, so when Verigy put together their proposal, they put together the purchase of a legacy system or a geothermal system, kind of a traditional system or a geothermal system. And so, that number comes from that, and they parted it all out, so we could kind of do a comparison. And, we believe that it may be high, it may not be that much, but that would be the maximum of what it would be.
Just curiosity on my part. So we built a brand new store in Baldwin and it's 40,000 square feet. The judicial center is about double that. And HVAC in our new building is 430,000. So this number just seems super high to me. Even if you double it and then double it again for remodel, I just don't know where the 9.5 comes in. So
I think it comes in from part of it comes in retrofitting an older building, that you can't, when you're building from the ground up, at least as Lynn explained to me, as you're building from the ground up, it's much easier to figure out
and I
how
understand
that all works, but we are flying the machine as we're building it. So we're living in it while we're building it as well, which raises the cost.
If I might,
Oh, Kelly's gonna comment quietly.
yeah. Can you hear me now?
Not well.
Okay, I will speak up then. So one of the differences in cost in those two scenarios, the jail and court system is made up of a much larger number of rooms broken up. It is harder and more expensive to heat a bunch of rooms separately as opposed to a larger space. So that's also part of the cost.
Did you hear that? Okay.
Any other questions? Before I move on?
Just quick on highway, you borrow 3 million a year for that.
Yes,
Is that on the 20-year note? Is that a separate note or is that just mingled with everything else?
that's usually 10.
10-year note?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I want to do. Thanks.
Okay, back to
Yeah,
page
everything.
6. Oh, of
It's
course.
not particularly related to the CIP. I'm just confused a little bit on the debt numbers. On page 2, you indicate the debt as of 12/31/2024 at 23.7 million. On page 3, on the chart for existing debt service obligations, the total is 31. Am I just stupid? I don't quite.
No,
Okay.
you're not. So what's outstanding debt is what we still owe. What's remaining? This is what our payments are in principal.
Okay, but it says remaining debt balance. I don't get it. Sorry.
So $23.6 million this is where we would be. What you see on page 3
Yeah.
is those are the payments that are paying down the debt,
Right?
which is different than saying on page 2 is what is our balance outstanding. Those are, one is outstanding and one is the payments that we're making towards that debt. So like in 24, we levied for $5.89 million. So eventually 25 would keep chipping at if we had no more debt,
Gotcha.
then you would see that the graph is also like how we would be paying it down. So
right.
as of 24, that is what we have on the books for debt. Eventually we'll be paying it off, and that's
Right.
what you see on 3.
Okay,
So as we make payments per each year in 25, that number on page 2 would also shrink.
I think I understand.
Okay. Excellent question.
Maybe others don't.
I had the same question too. We'll go back and verify the number.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is this a mistake?
Yeah.
It's
Well-
a fairly significant.
Is this like a car loan? In other words, if I pay my payments out over the time period, it's gonna be 31 million. But if I went in tomorrow and paid it off, it would be 23.
No, we can't prepay them because we
No,
told
I
them,
mean, is that the difference?
yeah, I don't know. Let us just verify the numbers.
Yep. Certainly do that.
Thank you.
Okay, so then we're back to, I think we ended with page 6, the second slide on the bottom. So with the geothermal debt, taking it on, that would still meet us within that ceiling of 5.3. It's a little bit under as years go by, but that would be until 2031. So this is when opportunity would come in and then say, this is a window to maybe perhaps borrow for another project. But given the meeting today at the Highway Committee, the recommendation was that they begin that construction in 2028. So that kind of pushes that little, not 31 like at the previous page said, but push it out to 28. So that means in 27, there's costs for engineering and design. And then 2 years later, issued debt for the renovation. By doing that, taking on the debt on the 28th as it was recommended, that would put us at that 5.8 to 5.9 debt service ceiling, which is above that 5.3. And approximately that's, I'm estimating here because the date has moved 2 years versus the scenarios that PMA provided for us, made the assumption that it's going to be at a different year. So those are just estimates to what that increase to the debt levy service would be if this stays on, if the highway facility construction starts on 2028 and 2 years later will be the renovation. And this is all based on, again, 4.5 current market rates. And also what the PMA worked into is the net construction as they see growing in the next few years.
Supervisor Wilsey.
So question, are we moving the highway project back? Because we don't want to raise taxes, basically?
Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead, Debieta.
So the last slide just kind of summarizes what's the next step. You know, as I said earlier, the workshop took place in April time. In May, this is where Facilities Committee met and made their recommendation for the HVAC geothermal. And then today, the Executive Committee here kind of formulates that recommendation on that CIP and its funding for 26. And then, of course, this will go to the County Board of Supervisors to adopt the CIP.
Does any board members have any other questions for Beata? Seeing none or hearing none, I have 2 or 3 questions for Chairman McCullough. Can you hear me, Kelly?
I can. If I speak loudly, can you hear me?
Not too bad right now.
Great. I
Okay.
will hold my head very still.
My question, and thank you, Beata. I don't, are there anything else that Beata can answer for us up there? If not, I think you could retire gracefully. Thank you. My question, Kelly, is being that we have a question on the numbers here, is it appropriate for us to okay this without having the numbers that we know? In other words, we'd be okaying it without the questions answered. And so I'm wondering if it shouldn't wait until we get those answers. And then I got 2 more questions. Being that this is money, does the executive board have a roll call vote on it? I know when the board votes, it's a roll call vote. And that's my question. I'm not overly confident here about approving something where we have a question not answered.
So I
Okay.
believe Beata should be able to find us an answer. Beata, if you need, I bet you Jenna can help you to, Jenna's got your laptop.
Okay. And
Can you find us
so
a debt verification question? Can you answer that question? Yep. No.
in terms of procedure, this isn't voting to spend that money. This is voting to move this as a policy decision forward. And the vote to spend the money would be held by a later board. So it does not need to be a roll call vote. And I think we could push it forward with the assumption that the numbers will be correct by the time it comes before the board. But again, since this is a policy, this is it's a policy, not a budget vote. So what we would be voting on is, do we think this is the appropriate way to move forward in terms of the large capital improvement projects? So essentially this is, we need to move forward with the HVAC sooner because it's an end of life system, and move the highway shop back a little bit so that we're not squeezing on taxes. So since it's not a formal actual vote on spending the money, it would be perfectly okay for it to be a voice vote both here and at the county. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So you're saying at the county board, it wouldn't have to be a roll call vote?
No, because because it's a policy question, not an actual. We're not actually voting to spend the money now. We're voting to move forward with the plan to do these things, figure out the numbers, and then once we have those numbers solidly, that would be a roll call vote because that will actually be spending the money.
Thank you for your patience to trying to educate a Norwegian here. Thank you.
Happy to oblige. I'm sorry I'm having so much trouble with my sound. I've tried 3 different microphone sets, and apparently this is the best I'm gonna get.
Well, that answers my question, and if that's the case, we have a motion and a second, and we've had Beata's explanation. Also, we'll try to get the numbers straight before we leave today. But
May I, Chair?
yes, please.
So what I would say is, while you are not committing the money, you can change your minds because it gets rolled into the 2026 operating budget. You are providing some fairly strong parameters for us in the development of that budget. So you're essentially committing that, sort of all other things being equal, that you know that budget's going to come forward with $9.5 million of borrowing for an HVAC system. You know that we're going to utilize $785,000 of fund balance to balance that operating budget. Now, again, you could change your minds about that, but the idea of bringing you the CIP first is that we have, what the big ticket items are, and we can build those into our 2026 operating budget with some certainty of what your desires are.
Thank you, Chris. I think I understand. Is everybody else ready to go? If there aren't any other, Supervisor Wilsey.
Since we have 2 facility committees members here, have you toured the HVAC system? and seen how bad it is?
I have not. We saw the geothermal in this building at the last meeting.
I guess the reason I asked that question is it really at the end of life?
Well, it is at the end of its life. I mean, it's the end of its designated life. So when you buy it, like when you buy a car, you know, I don't know, however long they say a car is gonna last, however long. So it could last another year, it could last another decade.
I'm just,
The issue again is it's unlikely to have a catastrophic failure. The issue is all of the pieces cost a lot of money. And as they start to fail, if you pick a course that's going to start to fix them one at a time, that is the course then, because you're investing so much money in each fix.
and this is me just thinking out loud. So I was just thinking highway really needs a shop. So if you swapped them.
The issue would be if the system fails tomorrow in the HVAC, because we are responsible for 24/7 occupation of that building, including people who don't have an ability to leave. We need to be particularly, to know that we have a solid plan. Could you do that? Sure, that's the decision making that you all can do. It may inadvertently set you on a path, because if something happens, then we're into fixing the existing system versus replacing it with a different system.
If I might, one
Yes.
other consideration is that it is becoming increasingly hard to find replacement parts because the system was designed to last a certain amount of time and nobody is making those replacement parts. So if it is unlikely it would have a catastrophic failure, but if we do, it can get very, very expensive very, very fast.
Thank you, Kelly.
That's what I was gonna say. What we were told is there's parts that we can't get anymore. So if it does fail, it could get very expensive very quick.
Any other questions to be answered? Supervisor Quinn?
Yeah, I could not hear Kelly's answer to, Kelly's answer to Supervisor Wilsey's question about why the cost was so high. And I'm just wondering if that was answered to your satisfaction, or whether you had questions about that.
Yes, he just said because of working with the different buildings and the jail. He's saying that because there's more layers to it. Obviously, like our building in Baldwin is
Okay.
open air, so it's very easy to do.
So, I mean,
And he said it's difficult to get replacement parts.
I understand that, yeah. No, I just didn't hear that part. But my question, I guess, would be typically, wouldn't we be doing some kind of a study about, well, I don't know, maybe I guess, Chris, you're saying that the work about the analysis of costs and options was included in the original, basically is included in the original study that the engineering company did on the system. So we can
it is.
extrapolate from that.
Yep.
enough
It
information.
laid out what it would cost to replace the existing system with an existing type system, as well as what it would cost to do the geothermal. And they're not, okay, should never talk about millions of dollars, like that's not a lot of money, but they're not dramatically different numbers. Where the difference in ongoing price comes into is the length of time that a geothermal system lasts. It's designed to last 50 years plus.
Of those long-term savings.
Yes.
And additionally, I imagine there are energy cost calculations that we don't know, but we can expect are going to be a factor.
And they did some of that for us. We do know, and we knew this going into the project with Vergy, that the HVAC system in and of itself has a hard time paying for itself in any quick fashion. It was the solar complementary to that was going to help to pay it off faster. But that doesn't negate the fact that it does have a much longer lifespan and much lower ongoing maintenance costs over that lifetime than a legacy system.
Supervisor Kinnear?
Thank you. I don't know if this is far off the subject, but the ground source system would be the one like in this building and not like one in the neighbors. Is that correct? The neighbors has all separate, different units for each couple of rooms, and you have to repair them and fix them constantly. Whereas this building is very self-sufficient because it's done differently. So are we talking about that kind of money? What?
I think we're talking about the current technology that works the best. How's that for a governmental answer? No, but I mean, I think that the technology, so the neighbor NDC is 12 plus years old, 13, whatever years old. Even this building, which we did later on, is now 9 years old. So that technology, I mean, we would look to that technology, which would serve us best for the longest amount of time.
Yeah,
If I
Supervisor
might,
Proctor.
the systems are gonna be hooked together for this one and that one with this new system. So I'm sure it's gonna be more like this one than neighbors. I'm not sure the neighbors one, but when we're discussing this, going the geothermal versus the traditional, whatever. The numbers we were presented, basically, if we spread that out over 20 years, the traditional probably end up costing us more money than the geothermal. With the geothermal savings, with the energy savings, it seemed to me that it was going to pay itself off a lot, or not pay itself off, but it would be very more beneficial to the county to have that savings for more than 20 years. Like I say, the other system was actually going to cost us more after 20 years than the geothermal. Big thing on the geothermal, we're still hoping to get a rebate on that for the energy savings, which could be $2 million, which really reduces that price down even more. And like I say, the traditional, if you spread it over 20 years, was actually going to cost us that much anyway. So that's why we decided to go the system we did. It's the same as this one. So if we ever need to fix something, we know how this one works. We could fix that one basically the same way. So that's kind of why we went the way we did. So.
Any
There
other
is-
questions?
Kelly, I believe, has the comment.
Kelly?
yeah, there is one other cost savings involved in doing geothermal and the cross-link that Randy just mentioned. And that's that by cross-linking the two systems, you can use capacity moving back and forth. So it will also reduce the costs of running the HVAC in the government center.
Thank you. Any other questions? Question project, a lot of answers, explanations. Appreciate everybody's concern. It's a lot of money.
Can I add just one more little tidbit of information that I think is important, and I did share with Highway this morning. So when we entered into the contract with Verigy, there were terms to that contract which included if they did work on our behalf and the project didn't come through, we would owe them some amount of money. As it turns out, I don't know if they would have charged us or not, but it turned out to be that it would have been about $100,000. A design, as you know, from our design and engineering for the new highway shop, that was about $750,000. Verigy is going to give us all of the design plans for a new system in exchange for their $100,000. So it's a significant cost savings to us to not have to purchase outside design. They can also obviously bid on, submit a proposal to be the vendor for that, but we will be sort of ready to go with the design and the engineering already accomplished.
Thank you.
One more question.
Supervisor Proctor.
Reading the highway basically wanted to postpone this of the years because that increase in levy payment, which was 500 to 600,000. What I was told, or got some numbers, it was like between $13 and $15 per thousand or $100,000. So we want to postpone that to get better numbers and see where we're at, and see if we can get a building maybe a little cheap, do something else. So we want to investigate that a little bit. Postpone at least a year. Like I say, maybe it'll be longer than that, but we want to investigate a little bit more. So that's why we decided to postpone the highway stuff and prioritize the geothermal in the judicial center.
Quite educational today for me anyway. Appreciate it. Appreciate your information. Now, before anybody else has any questions, let's vote, huh? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
Do you have a number, Beata? Yeah. Beata will clarify the number for you.
We will now segue back into an explanation.
More question.
All right, so looking at those two slides, what you see that 31, I failed to remove 2025 and all the other futures that I was projecting. So I know the graph is right. The numbers here, just what I did copy paste, embarrassing explanation. But rest assured on page 2 is what I anticipate our debt to be when we receive our audit report with the money that we borrowed in 24, not what we will borrow yet this year and the following. Make sense? Okay.
Yep.
Sorry about that, and thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Thank you, Beata. You're out of the spotlight. Here we go. Next order of business is 8B, 2025 budget adjustment, environmental services, health, and DHS. The explanations are there. You should have had a chance to read them. I would entertain is there any explanations that are needed beyond what's provided? If not, I would entertain a motion to go ahead and approve this. Supervisor Bauer moves. Is there a second? Supervisor Morehouse seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Same sign. Or
Who's
late,
late,
huh?
yeah.
Okay. Motion carries. Next order is 8C, Ordinance Amendment, Chapter 2, Rules of the Board. I would entertain a motion to adopt. And then we'll get an explanation from the legal eagle over there.
Finding it. Maybe.
Is there a motion to?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
That's a clarification. Move, so.
Thank you for clarifying that. We'd like a clarification there, Mr. Jim.
But I'm gonna have something on the screen here in just a second.
Okay.
I think. And Kelly, we can hear you now, just to let you know.
Hooray.
We figured out the volume button.
No IT people here.
said we.
I'll be right back, excuse me.
Thank you.
Any success yet?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've already adjourned.
It was a bloodless coup.
Right. So this is Dan's fault. He's not.
For all the culverts, man.
It was 155, now it's 145.
Right, exactly.
Looks kind of wobbly.
All right, we might be kind of ready here. Oh, there we go.
Okay, Corp Council is now in control.
Sure. I noticed that I was sending you guys like 65, 70 pages when really we were only changing three from the last meetings or the meetings we've had in this before. So I thought I'd just cut up the one sheet of paper to kind of go through them so we weren't scrolling all evening here. The three changes that were made since the last meeting, one was recommended, I believe there was a staff report put out by Dan regarding seating arrangements, and that's in section 2.09.
I didn't understand the reason for that at all.
Supervisor Kinnear had asked. Supervisor Kinnear, why don't you lay out your thinking so that the rest of us are on top of it?
Oh,
Really, of course.
developing relationships on the board is one of the most important things we can do. And where you are seated, whether it was in school, whether it was in other committee meetings or whatever, makes a big difference on who you develop relationships with. If you sit with somebody for 8 years or 9 years, like you and I, Diane, with a few changes, you don't get to see the other folk. So it's a standard procedure that's been proven to work to mix people up a little bit. I'm not saying every day, after a year or something like that, but that's the purpose. If you see something where one side is all one way of thinking, this side is all the other way of thinking, perhaps the county board chair should have the opportunity to make a change so that people can be mixed up and develop relationships better. There.
And if I might add,
Makes no
Dan and I
sense to
were,
me.
when we were discussing this, with the very high turnover on the board the past few years, and I expect a not insignificant amount of turnover over the next few years, with a much younger board that hasn't had that time to gel into a body, it may be handy from time to time to rearrange things so that everybody gets to know each other.
Does that answer your question, Supervisor Morehouse?
Yes, doesn't change my mind.
No, that's not my
But it
question.
does
I said,
answer
does it
the
answer your
question.
question? Yeah. Yeah. We knew it wouldn't change your mind. Supervisor Kinnear,
Yeah,
please.
and I just looked at this and I made the suggestion, it's not an earth shattering. If it's in here, not much is going to change, maybe depending who the chair is. If it's not in here, things will remain exactly as they are.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right, the second and third changes were to the appendices. The first was the executive committee. Land somehow got taken out of there, and I do not have any explanation why the straight cut and paste from the current ordinance, but I added that back in. And then Dan had mentioned that I did not put in a reference to the statute that's under, so I added that in. And finally, and this was based on feedback I got at the last executive committee to the HHS, I removed the part that only the 5 county board members can vote. However, if it's in one of those very specialized areas where it should just be based on the county board vote, that their votes will be the ones counted. I reworded it so it's less exclusionary, but still compliant with Wisconsin statute.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I still have pretty strenuous objections to this. So what we are essentially saying is that the citizen members of the Health and Human Services Board have no authority or right, I guess, to make decisions regarding veteran service. I mean, that's basically it. As everything else is addressed, everything else that the committee does is addressed in those 2 statutes, which are, fairly vague and not limiting. I would argue that the citizen members of the Health and Human Services Board know more about the Veteran Service Office than any other members of the county board. As they participate in those discussions, review the statistics, review the numbers. I don't understand why this is necessary. And I think it will complicate things for subsequent chairs and for the staff who are, trying not to count votes. I don't know. The change doesn't help me. And I think it's unnecessary.
This is where I wish Dan was here because he's the one who was very insistent with it. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I can give you an example. So the refugee resettlement issue, had that been action that came forward, that wouldn't have been action that would have been action coming to the board from the Health and Human Services membership, so there's the board and there's the committee, and they're separate. And so it would have been, if that had been brought to a vote and was a controversial vote, in the end, it would have been only the county board members whose votes would have counted.
So, if I might, I think the core of Dan's concern, and I have come over time to agree with him, is that statutorily, I know, Diane, that you were a little disturbed by more than a little disturbed, let's go with that, by the idea that the full board doesn't have authority over the veterans portion of what your committee looks at. But statutorily, that's the case. Whether we put that in our rules or not, it's still statutorily the case. So if there were a situation where the committee voted and the elected members of the county board who are members of the committee lost the vote because of the non-elected members, and then somebody sued us over this, we would lose the case. So it is functionally, we are trying to bring the rules into accordance with our statutory responsibilities. I don't like it either, but that's at least the way Dan has read the statutes, and I believe Jim reads them the same way, and so do I.
Thank you. A question, Kelly, from me here, Gary. Would this apply to the ADRC board and that type of thing also?
This is just a very small subset of decisions that come before HHS to get into, sort of where it goes out into the weeds. I'm not on top of that, but I know that the reason Dan was concerned about this is simply that the goal is just to bring it in line with the statutory requirements And my understanding, from talking with Jim and Dan about this, and Jim can correct me if he thinks I'm wrong, is that this would bring our rules into compliance with the statute. Now, if we don't put this in our rules, that doesn't necessarily mean we're out of compliance, but if we don't put this in our rules, then we do not have a specific path to resolving this within our rules, and we would just have to go to statute, and the result would be the same, but it would be 3 more steps.
Thank you, Kelly. Any other questions? Okay, that's our explanation. I would entertain a motion and a second to approve. Supervisor Kinnear moves. Is there a second? Supervisor Headland seconds. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
Might I just offer the Supervisor Morehouse that you certainly can bring an amendment to remove it if, I mean, it's not completed until the board approves it, and so could bring an amendment.
Next order of business is 8. D, resolution on chapter 2 appendices. Or is that what we just acted on?
Yeah.
No, so you had, so the bulk of the change that you have just recommended occur is to the actual ordinance. And then one of the additional changes which has occurred is to remove the appendices, which are comprised of the definition of the standing committees and the various special committees, and et cetera, that those stand alone then as appendices, not as a part of the ordinance, because they change on a somewhat regular basis. And you've made a number of moves around those over the years, adding the ADRC advisory committee, adding the nutrition council, changing the membership of the land information council, et cetera. And those then could happen as a resolution instead of an ordinance change.
Any other clarification needed? I would entertain a motion to adopt.
I think there's one other minor clarification that needs to be. So when this comes before the board, I'm going to either ask for a motion to postpone until the next meeting or a contingent motion so that the appendices only pass if the rest of the rules change pass. Because the rules change will be an ordinance, so it will be first reading and second reading. So we want the resolution for this to be approved after the ordinance is approved because they're tied together pretty intimately. So I don't know whether the best way to do that is to move this forward to county board as a advisory with the resolution coming forward, or to either put postpone the vote on this resolution at the board until the next meeting, or to make it a contingent motion. Any of the 3 is probably acceptable.
Well, you heard the chairman. What's the board's pleasure here? What's the easiest way, Kelly? I would hazard a guess postponing the vote.
Yeah, probably postpone bring the resolution forward, and at the time of the introduction at the board say, and we're going to postpone I would like a motion to postpone the vote. So that's probably the simplest, because I'd like to get it all before the board at the same time. But
I would.
Okay, so I just wanted to make that clear before we have our vote here. Now I will shut up.
Hopefully when that comes up, you'll be running the meeting and not me, so. I would entertain a motion that we postpone acting on 8D.
Actually, we'll postpone them. In this case, sorry, the motion would be to move this forward to the board and then postpone at the board meeting, I think is simplest. Or
all right, I stand corrected. I would entertain a motion to approve 8D. Supervisor Morehouse moves. Pardon?
I will second.
Oh, okay. Supervisor Kelly seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same
Aye.
sign. Motion carried. Now this one here, I hope can be sail right through. 8D here, double D or whatever it is, or E, whatever it is. Resolution appointing Daniel Dunbar as county manager. I would entertain a motion to such effect. Supervisor Prochnow moves. Is there a second? Supervisor Headland moves. Any clarification, discussion, argument, fight, whatever you want? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you. Next order of business is the review of reports, resolutions, and ordinances coming to the county board from the standing committee. A sight for sore eyes, none. Next order of business is number 10, reports from standing committees, committees on administration, judiciary and law, health, human services, facilities, neighbors of Dunn County, transit and highway, community resources, tourism, planning, resources, and development. We would start with the committee on administration. How's that?
Very short and sweet. We did not meet last month. We did not have any issues that demanded action. And so we, I guess, canceled that meeting. However, we are meeting, our next meeting will be the third Thursday, June 19th, here in room 60. So we moved that up a week and we will, we're meeting on the 19th. Thank you.
All right, thank you Supervisor Headland. Next, we'll hear from judiciary and law.
Thank you. So we held our meeting on Monday, May 19th at 4:30 in this room. I would say most of the standing committees or chairs are out. So we did have a report on the hazard mitigation plan, and we did decide to postpone that indefinitely. So as of right now, we're postponing it, and if there's money to come out from the federal government, we will take it up again. And so that was our major thing. Our next meeting is June 23rd, and instead of meeting here, we will now be meeting at the courthouse. So that's where most of the committees are, the judges and the sheriff. So we get to meet there at their house. So.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll hear from the Health and Human Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Health and Human Services Board last met on Thursday, May 22nd. We had our usual good reports from Veteran Services. They have a slightly increased staff state grant, so the budget goes up by like $700, but you know, every penny counts. And of course, this was just ahead of Memorial Day, so Greg outlined the fact that something like 4,800 little flags were going to be placed at 81 cemeteries around the county. They have lots of volunteers to do that. So recognizing our fallen veterans. We had a good report from Public Health. We passed, the Health Department inspection team passed the DATCAP evaluation for retail food and recreational business agents. They have recommended a couple of potential ordinance changes just to reflect language changes in statute and other. So we'll take a look at that. KT shared the annual 2024 report that will come to the board. We also had an excellent report from DHS. We are continuing to watch the federal budget about the elimination of the social services block grants, which is pretty foundational. All of that staff has basically been eliminated. So it's not clear what we're going to do going forward. We reviewed vouchers, we approved budget adjustments, and our next meeting is June 26th.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from facilities.
Facilities last met on May 28th. We started with Mark Thomas came as the Red Cedar Racing rep to talk about the noise reduction plan. that is in the contract now. They need to come up with a plan. They're gonna focus on turns 3 and 4 on the west end. They were talking about phasing it in over 8 years. The initial thought was to put in posts with discarded road signs at the end of turn 3. But there was some question about would that just reflect it if they're metal? So they're still gonna search some more, and hopefully come up with something that's known to absorb sound. And they're coming back to our next meeting to talk about that. Then we had Fair and Fair Board report. It's coming up quick, 57 days left. The schedule is up on their website. They have their judges. They cemented the rest of the underneath the coverall building, so the pigs won't have to be in dirt anymore. Then we had Scott's last facilities report in writing, and so was his last day, I think, right after that meeting. And then the big discussion, as you heard, was the whether to go with a traditional system or a geothermal system. And we discussed the pros and cons, and as Randy said, you know, the cost came from the Verigy, and a traditional, they estimated would be 8.6 million, and the geothermal would be 9.5. But over the life, it was going to save over $100,000 a year for maintenance and energy savings. And a big part of that cost was replacing all the piping. And so if that doesn't need to be done, it could come down potentially. And so we discussed it back and forth and whether we should spend more upfront on a geothermal or let the board decide in another 20 years whether, you know, if technology would change. But it seems to make more sense to spend the 9.5 to save the energy, plus we wouldn't have to hopefully replace it in 50 years, and the maintenance would be less, and we wouldn't hopefully have any more natural gas to be used as well. So, and then we had a surprise meeting on the Friday, May 30th, in at 8 o'clock to discuss the Red Cedar Racing scheduled race on a Wednesday night without permission. And so, so we had that discussion, let them know to get permission earlier next time, and that passed. And so our next meeting is June 25th at 5 p.m.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from neighbors of Dunn County.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We met the fourth Thursday of May. Carmen's been educating us, or trying to educate us. She's done a nice job. She's talked to us about payer sources and types of stay, and we're really getting smart, but there's a lot to learn. Let's see, Neighbors has that CNA nursing program there, and now we're also able to test. We're certified to do that, so that's a good deal. The more that we can do there, the more possibilities we can to keep CNAs. Got a new food golf cart. I rode on it, try and get used to when I get even older and I get in the retired community. I ride around one of them.
Next year.
And they had a tornado emergency drill that went fine. NDC is in the black. And our next meeting is a little different. It's the third Thursday of June instead of the other one. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Next, we'll hear from the CR&T. Excuse me, Transit and Highway.
Me all off here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I saw you relax. I got you.
Highway and Transit met this morning. Really nothing new on transit, nothing new on the electric vehicle. Highway, we are spray patching, pothole repairs. We sprayed herbicide on the ditches on the south side. We switched that around this year. I don't know if we talked about that, but we're mowing the north half of the county and spraying the south half for the ditches. Trying to cut back on herbicide. We're gonna see how that works for the next couple of years and see if we can cut back even more, but that's where we're at on that. Otherwise, the road work, County Road D down by Irvington Hill. Contractors continue working on that. They're hoping to pave that by mid-June. So that will be hopefully open here end of June, July sometime. County Road DG from 25 to 816. We still got a couple real estate parcels we're still trying, which is Jake's Pioneer area. We still got a couple real estate things we got to take care of there. We are hoping to get that done in the next 2 weeks, and we're hoping to start that project right after July 4th. If those get contracts signed. We paved County Road S from 170 to County Road N. We paved County Road G from County Road D to 25. County Road J, we're hoping to maybe even do that yet this week or next week for paving. County Road Y, we're paving right now. What else we got? County Road B from 25 to 12. We just got done with the culverts in there. A couple major culverts got replaced there. So we're hoping to get that done sometime yet this year too, to get pulverized and paved. Otherwise, that's about it. Next meeting's a month from now.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from the CR&T.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
We met Tuesday, May 20th at 4:30 and here in this room. Kristen Bruder introduced Samantha Stevens as the new intern. She was not present, so we didn't get a chance to meet her personally, but she introduced her as that. She talked about the federal cuts. I mean, everybody's heard about the big, beautiful bill, so there are going to be some cuts in the SNAP program. If that happens, they could possibly lose four FTEs. Their budget for 2025 was 329,000. They're going to be all right this year, but if this happens, the cut will hurt. It's also known as FoodWise. 70 of the 72 counties are involved in this, so could hurt a lot of counties. And the economic development did a walkthrough on industry and Stout Tech. Adam Alcoa is meeting with Dunn County businesses to focus on retention, trying to keep the businesses continue to stay in Menominee. The communications press release for the rural doorstop. Have you all heard about that that's been on TV and the press release. Mental health and training and celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Western Regional Recovery and Wellness Program. So our next meeting was going to be June 17th, but we've already canceled that. It will, due to not a lot of members being able, not the members, but the committee member or the people that couldn't make it, I guess. So it'll be done.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now we'll hear from PR&D.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very short. We met once since our last meeting on June 4th. Had a short meeting. We had reports, again, excellent reports from the departments, all the staff. We reviewed the presentation that staff are giving at the county board meeting next week. And we approved the budget transfer that we approved tonight. And then we adjourn. And I think we'll meet again next week, next Wednesday. So.
Thank you all for your reports. Our next order of business is the next meeting date. I see we got July 16th or July 23rd, since the county board is July 30th. Is it our choice then? So what is the board's preference? The 16th or the 23rd?
I think the 23rd is probably better. Gives us a little bit more. It gives us more time for things to come up and just have it the week before the board. That's my thought. Also, I might be out of town on the 16th, but I would have to find the sheet with that information on it.
The 23rd? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it does make more sense than we're closer to the meeting. So in case something comes up, we got the information. Pardon? Yeah. Yes, the next meeting will then be July 23rd at 3:30 in this room here. I want to thank everybody for their attendance and their contributions. And that concludes our business, and we are adjourned.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, you bet, Kelly.
See y'all in a week.
Yeah,
We're
stay healthy.
working on it.
Bye.